This is Talk Business and Politics with Roby Brock.
And welcome to the program. I'm Roby Brock, and for all of our new viewers in Northeast Arkansas, we welcome you to Talk Business and Politics. I hope you'll take the time to reach out to us through our email, our website at talkbusiness.net, and social media. Now, this past week, I sat down with the junior senator from Arkansas, Tom Cotton. He offered his take on the recent results from Iowa and what to expect going forward. Welcome, Senator Tom Cotton. Appreciate you visiting with us from Washington, D.C. today. Let's talk about the Iowa caucuses, the New Hampshire primaries just right around the corner. You've spent some time in New Hampshire recently. What was your takeaway from what happened in Iowa, and what are your expectations for New Hampshire?
Well, thanks, Roby. It's good to be on with you. I understand that you're now up in Northeast Arkansas as well, so I want to say hello to your viewers up there. I think that one of the biggest stories out of Iowa is the massive Republican turnout. The increase in turnout was over 50%. Some of that is obviously attributable to the campaigns that worked hard to get Republican voters to the caucuses, but some of that just reflects the enthusiasm that so many Republican voters have. And then you contrast that on the Democratic side, where the Democratic Party has done everything they could to circle the wagons around Hillary Clinton, yet a socialist from Vermont was able to run even Steven with her. So I think that bodes very well for the Republican Party this November in the general election, not only in Iowa, but all around the country.
Let's talk about the three top place finishers in Iowa. You have Cruz, you have Trump, you have Rubio. Are you comfortable with any three of them if they were to get the GOP nomination? And I will extend that a little further. If you wish to state who you might be endorsing, as some congressional folks have done in Arkansas this week, we would entertain that.
Well, Roby, as you know, I've long supported Bernie Sanders in the Democratic primary, and I'm just going to point out that he outperformed expectations, and he's about to run away with New Hampshire. I'm not taking credit for it. I'm just saying.
All right.
On the Republican side, though, any Republican would be a better president than either Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders. So I'm not yet endorsing anyone on the Republican side. Our primary is still 4 weeks away in Arkansas, but I'm confident that any Republican would be a better president and a better commander-in-chief, and I will strongly support the Republican nominee.
Do you have any kind of timetable for when you might make an endorsement? Do you want to see the field whittle down a little bit more, or are you close to a decision on that?
No, Roby, no timetable. We've only had one state so far vote. There's many more states to come. So I think it's important that our voters make this decision in the coming weeks.
So you have jokingly referred to Bernie Sanders as your guy in the Democratic primary over there. Do you think he is an easier candidate for the eventual GOP nominee to beat than Hillary Clinton?
Well, if you've got a choice between two socialists, you might as well pick the one that's a self-avowed socialist and has the courage of his convictions. That's one reason why I think Bernie better represents the heart of the Democratic Party in Washington today. I wouldn't venture a guess to say that Bernie or Hillary would be easier to beat, but I know that most Arkansans, and I think most Americans, are looking for a change in direction from Barack Obama, and it's the Republican candidate who's going to deliver that new direction.
Let's talk about some things that are going on in Congress. There was a meeting earlier this week between President Obama and the leader of the House, the leader of the Senate, Mitch McConnell. I'm not sure if you've necessarily been debriefed on what that meeting entailed, but what can you tell me of that meeting between those three important dignitaries?
Well, Senator McConnell gave us a brief overview of what they were discussing. I think the most important thing is that the Congress try to do our business in a timely and orderly fashion to fund the government and reflect the spending priorities of Arkansans and all the other folks who are represented here in Washington, D.C. Last year the Democrats obstructed those spending measures until the end of the year, which made it very hard to reflect some of the priorities that Arkansans care about when you have a single $1 trillion, 2,000-page bill dumped with just 48 hours to review it in December. So I'm hopeful that we can move forward in a responsible fashion, fund the government, reflect the priorities of the people of Arkansas, and then move forward to the fall when we're all going to be campaigning in the presidential elections.
Senator, so there are plenty of issues that you and the president differ on. There are a lot of divisive issues out there. As you know better than anybody, it's very difficult in a presidential election year to get anything done in Congress. So aside from the divisive issues, Obamacare, foreign affairs, the budget per se, is there a particular issue where you see some bipartisanship or some opportunity for common ground for you and Republicans to work with Democrats in Congress and the White House?
Roby, I hope we can find some areas for bipartisan cooperation. Just this coming week, we're going to be working on sanctions against North Korea for their recent nuclear test. And that had broad bipartisan support in the Foreign Relations Committee, and I expect you'll see it on the Senate floor and the House floor as well. I hope President Obama signs that legislation. I'm working on a measure that would help increase access to job training and job opportunity for veterans. Again, that's something that appeals across party lines and would be good for Arkansans, and I hope that we can move it forward, whether it's on its own or whether it's attached to another piece of legislation. So you're right that it's always hard to pass legislation in a presidential election year, but you know, we've been having elections in this country every other year for over 200 years, and presidential elections every 4 years for the same time, and we've always managed to find some ways to work together in those years, so I hope we can do that again.
I can point to a lot of examples of where the two parties and all the different chambers have not worked very well together too during those 2-year and 4-year election cycles. Let's switch to something where there is some controversy. You have raised some objections to a sentencing overhaul bill that has been pushed by some Republicans and many Democrats. Your fear is that in addition to working maybe on behalf of some nonviolent offenders, this bill could free some violent offenders from prison. I'll give you a chance to stake out your position on this legislation before I ask you a follow-up.
Roby, this legislation is based on a myth, the myth of mass incarceration of nonviolent low-level drug offenders in federal prison. That's just not the case. First, federal prisoners only account for about 1/8 of all prisoners in this country. Second, less than 1/2% of those federal prisoners are in prison for mere possession of drugs. Most of them are drug traffickers or dealers, which is built on a foundation of violence. And third, even those in prison for that crime of possession probably plea bargain down from a more serious crime. If we move forward with sentencing leniency, and especially if we make it retroactive, thousands of felons are going to be released onto the streets of America, and they're going to commit crimes like happened in Ohio just last month, when a felon who was released early from federal prison stabbed his ex-girlfriend to death, stabbed one of her children to death, and slit the throat of the other one. I don't want to see those kind of violent crimes across Arkansas or in our country. There is some common ground, I think, for criminal justice reform. Reforming our prison system so guards aren't endangered and so prisoners don't endanger each other, and so radical groups like the Muslim Brotherhood can't radicalize and recruit terrorists inside prisons across America, or trying to improve rehabilitation and redemption programs, which is not just in keeping with our Christian faith, but also smart policy, because most prisoners, if they don't get life without parole or the death penalty, are going to ultimately be released. And we want to help them with their addictions and try to get them basic job skills and a GED if they need one, and make them into productive members of society. That's an area where we can find common ground. We should not be letting violent felons back out into the streets, though.
All right, we've got about 30 seconds left in our window here. Just very quickly, if there was something that was a stripped-down version of this bill and it only dealt with nonviolent offenders that had possession on their records, would you be supportive of that?
I would explore it, Roby, but again, you're talking about a very, very tiny population of federal prisoners, probably less than 100, that are truly nonviolent, low-level, first-time drug possession offenders. That's simply not the case in federal prison. If you go to federal prison for a drug crime, it is almost certainly that you're a repeat or a violent offender, and we shouldn't release those people early from prison.
All right, Senator Tom Cotton, thanks, and work on that beard a little bit. There's just a spot of gray in it right there. I'm just pointing that out to you.
It was a medical emergency when I fell on the ice last week, but now my wife tells me she likes it, so I'm torn on what to do.
All right, thank you, Senator Cotton. Yeah, I'm just not so sure about sporting that beard. We'll see if that stays. That's Senator Tom Cotton, and you can catch that full interview online at our website at talkbusiness.net.